Welcome to Live Stream Insiders. My name's Krishna and I'm here with my co-host. That's your favorite journalist, author, gosh, whatever else can we put to him? His name is Peter Stewart. And I should also say Happy Easter for those of you who celebrate it. And we're delighted to be here. We said last week though, Peter, I mean, why on earth are we here? We said we weren't going to be here.
Absolutely, Krishna. Happy Easter to you and welcome along to the show. If you're watching live or whether you're watching the pre-recorded show, as we signed off, you're absolutely right. We said, you know what, we won't be here next week unless there's a lot to talk about. Inevitably, the world of live streaming there is. So let's press this and let's do this. And let's get cracking, Easter egg cracking, because there's an awful lot to get through in the course of the next 30 minutes. Yes, this is the only programme that says we're going to be looking at live video and live streaming news from the last 7 days in the next 30 minutes. Heads down, eyes ahead, here we go. And one of the top things we're going to be talking about is yet another way which Twitter is trying to make a little bit of money. And it's doing it by harnessing the power of not adverts, not paying you to do any live streaming, but asking you whether you wouldn't like to have some personalized hearts. Now, this is really, really interesting. So Twitter is allowing streamers on Periscope to have their own custom hearts. Obviously, they're not actually hearts necessarily, but let's just call them hearts for the sake of it for the moment. And those custom hearts are going to be mixed with Periscope's typical hearts during the course of a stream. And what it means is that brands can, with Twitter as well, design their custom emojis to float up the screen when people are tapping the screen. So we're tapping the screen for hearts. That phrase is going to be a little bit outdated, of course. And those hearts will then be seen, or those emojis, those brands, those logos will be seen by Periscope viewers on Periscope and on Twitter as well. There's always that problem, isn't there, about where the difference comes between Twitter and a live Twitter video stream or a Periscope stream. But on this occasion, they're going to be shown in both of those. And they're also going to be activated when a brand uses a specific hashtag in the title of their live stream. Now, you've seen things like that in things like hashtag turkey or hashtag, it was hashtag Thanksgiving, wasn't it, when the turkeys would float up the side of the screen, or hashtag Halloween, where you would get various ghosts or pumpkins and so on floating up the side of the screen as well. And of course, all this comes at a bit of a cost to the brand, because that means that you're going to have to pay to actually get your tailor-made emoji, which is going to be integrated with your live stream. Now, it's already started. NBC Universal, the first company to actually get into bed, as it were, with Twitter as regards these custom emojis. They've got a new film coming out, a new movie coming out, which is called The Fate of the Furious, and it's the 8th installment in the Fast and Furious movie franchise. So they had an emoji come up the screen, as you can see it there, of F8, which I thought was a little bit boring under the circumstances, to be quite honest with you. But what it means is that it does give brands, in that case NBC Universal, an opportunity to capture a high number of engagements and actually allow fans to perhaps express enthusiasm in a particularly kind of branded way. And also what it means is that perhaps it means that if you're a particular fan, as it would be in this circumstance, of a movie or of that franchise, you're more likely to tap the screen, you're more likely to send that logo up the screen. And maybe, you know what, Krishna, maybe that kind of translates in part into some sort of increased engagement with the live stream, and maybe possibly perhaps there could be added metrics that the Periscope Twitter are going to be building in, the number of logos that were sent by your fans as they watch your live stream. And of course, even if it doesn't, it means much more likely that you're going to be having an increased number of hearts in general, even if they're not split between what are hearts and what are your branded hearts. And that, of course, means that you're able to go along to somebody else and say, hey, look at the number of hearts we've got. Aren't we fab? Aren't we doing a really good job here on Periscope or Twitter? So I think really interesting. It's a way that they can get money. It's a way the brands can get a bit more traction, a bit more involvement, a bit more engagement, of course, which is all important in the world of live streaming. Is it likely to be coming to the likes of you and I? No, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're going to have to pay big dollars for this, and you and I don't have that kind of cash around. I know. I've looked behind the back of the sofa already. And number two, it has to be checked. The logos have to be done in conjunction with Twitter. So no brand sets up something which is an unfortunate or devious or deliberate misuse of a brand or a logo or something offensive or something political or something of that nature. So it's all changed. Well, not all changed, but it's a little bit of a change for Twitter and Periscope. And incidentally, I talked at the start of this segment about always that kind of merger and that grey area between Twitter and Periscope. And this was interesting, Krishna. I don't know whether you saw this in the week. In fact, I know you did because I saw you tweet about it. And that was slight change when you're looking at your Twitter account on your desktop. So before it would say that you were the number of periscopes that you've had, and now it talks about the number of live videos that you have instead. So that's number one. And number two, Twitter Media has actually been renamed Twitter Live. Now, as you know, only Twitter themselves can have a handle with the name Twitter in. So they've changed from Twitter Media to Twitter Live. Gives another idea that they're going to be pushing more and more into live video. So those two things, another couple of suggestions there in the last 7 days, makes me come to the realization that Periscope may not be too much longer for this world. I don't know what you reckon.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, in terms of all these changes? But particularly, I liked the Twitter heart or the Periscope heart, whatever you want to call it, and it fits in with the other things that Twitter themselves do, you know, in terms of custom hashtags. So I saw a friend of mine being really excited because I think we've got the new series of Doctor Who's just launched yesterday evening, and there was a whole series of little emoji, so to speak, related to that. So it connects with that. And I guess the other reason that they'd want to kind of clear up on it and actually approve it is because of any trademark issues as well, because we see people trademarking, organizations trademarking hashtags, and obviously don't want to have icons there kind of floating through Periscope that are actually in breach of that. Anyway, just wanted to say hi to everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here live. If this is the first time you've been here for Live Stream Insiders, perhaps you found us because of the social media summit that took place this week in Ireland, and I was able to speak at that. And I know some of you might be joining us as a result of starting to think about live video. And for those of you who were there and those of you who are yet to actually meet Peter or I in person, one of the things that I've set up as a result of being at that event was a lot of people were finding it difficult in terms of going live on live streaming platforms. Doesn't matter which one it is, and that's partly about having confidence on camera. I talked about 6 key things that actually stop people actually live streaming. And so I've got a little accountability group that we're just setting up in this next week. So if you're absolutely new to live video, this is not for all of you who actually participate in it all the time. If you're absolutely new, then please do come along and join me. You can send me a message on most social media platforms and I'll be able to show you how to do that. I know, Peter, you actually want to just kind of raise something there as we're talking about live video and newbies.
Absolutely. And of course, it is the Easter holidays, certainly in the UK and many parts of the world. We've had a long bank holiday weekend here, and we've got some children on holiday either side of that for the best part of a fortnight. And it occurs to me, Krishna, that, kids on phones, maybe they are the newbies. And perhaps it's another opportunity, because I know there have been 2 or 3 articles out during the course of the week, again, about privacy, about security and things like that. Particularly, I know, quite a lengthy article looking at different social media platforms and those live streaming platforms. Specifically, do you know what your kids are up to when they're tapping away on their phone?
Well, that's in fact one of the things that I talked about at the social media summit. It's almost as if you were with us there, Peter, because one of the things that I said is about the whole issue of privacy. And you know, I've got 3 daughters, and that's obviously an important topic for me. And one of the things that I guess there's a few real kind of key topics for me around social and also live video. And one of those topics happens to be the issue of keeping our kids safe. So it was great that actually Peter unearthed an article really quite in depth. And I've written about this topic, and we've talked about it several times over the almost now 2 years that we've been here live streaming for Live Stream Insiders. Remember, everything that we talk about, we'll have later curated for you. It may in fact be tomorrow before I put those notes out for all of the articles. But this is a really nice long article, because even though we as perhaps parents might be, you know, not wanting to be on camera, you can be sure that most of our teens and tweens are very, very confident about doing so. And that's partly because of this YouTube generation and the fact that they're getting a lot of the content in that way. And also they've seen people become from just regular people like themselves to become really popular, having blogs, having books, having products that they can buy in the high street because those individuals have monetized their personal brand and they've got licenses for products. I know because my daughters actually purchase some of those books and those products themselves and want to go to some of the events that they're hosting. So this is quite a long article in terms of actually going through. It's from CNN and actually talks about the different platforms that your teens, your tweens may be using. And it also goes through tips in terms of what parents need to know. I'm not going to go through that in depth because I think it's worth you having a look at. I think the key thing is be aware that it's happening. And there's 3 things that I would actually just add to it in terms of as a parent myself. The first thing is be absolutely aware of privacy or privacy wherever you are. So remember, if you're on Facebook Live, there's that live map. And boy, oh boy, have Peter and I talked about this before, of some of the things you'd be really surprised, shocked, dismayed at in terms of what's being streamed there by young people, possibly from their bedrooms, certainly even from their friends' rooms, other locations. So make sure your teens and tweens understand the whole issue of privacy. The second thing is be aware of watching what they're spending. I mean, I don't know if you've got kids, are you looking at their spend in terms of their data? Because live video is really expensive. And perhaps some of your kids have actually got all you can eat tariffs, that's fine. But what you don't want them doing is running up a humongous bill. Let me just say that we do have a little bit of experience of this in our family. It wasn't live video, it was actually watching YouTube on mobile device, and we thought that some of the data had been turned off in terms of all capped, and we ended up with a very significant bill a few summers ago, I have to say now, and they're much more aware of it as a result of that. But the third thing is be aware of, unfortunately, there's grooming that takes place. This is no different from any other social platform, but you know, one of the things that we're seeing is almost live video makes us feel like we know the person. Peter and I never met for 9 months, and yet we had this live stream, actually show going for 9 months. We met online. Did I know what I was really dealing with when I was starting to stream with him? But at the end of the day, you build up this relationship. Live video is fantastic for feeling like you know people, but therefore that gives you more of a risk in terms of the areas such as grooming. So really good to see this kind of article being done by a major publication. And as I said, it's on CNN. Thank you, Peter, for actually highlighting this particular piece of content in terms of what we need to be aware of if we're parents or guardians of actually teens and tweens and what they may be up to in terms of live video. Believe me, they're probably not so frightened about being on camera, unlike some of us who are a little older than them.
Absolutely. And what's good about that article is it breaks down several different platforms and some really nice, crisp, clean bullet points as well. It's not a whole ton of words. It's quite a long article, but it's laid out and broken down. So it's really good. And as I say, we've got a bit of a theme here because there's been another couple of instances during the course of the last 7 days. Just to remind you, this is Live Stream Insiders. We talk about live streaming news from the last 7 days in the next 30 minutes, halfway through this week's show, incidentally, because there's been an article from qz.com or qz.com, depending on where you are and how you talk, and about the murky ethics of Facebook Live and filming people without your consent. As Krishna said a few moments ago, it's another topic that we've spoken about in the past. I won't spend too long on it, but just quickly go through some of the main bullet points here. And they say our instinct very often when we see something is to grab a phone and to stream it immediately, start recording or start pushing it out live. And obviously that does have merit in certain circumstances. But what if someone doesn't want to be filmed? At what point do we tell them, maybe in a public place, that they are going out live? Do we respect their wishes at all? Now, of course, if we respected everyone's wishes, then a lot of material would never be shown. I'm thinking about things like the Arab Spring, which kind of kick-started a couple of years ago the push into more and more live streaming and making it more into the public consciousness. The Spanish anti-austerity measures, the Russian opposition in Chechnya, and things like that. The Occupy Wall Street movement as well. And also police brutality in certain parts of the world. There has been some major instances, of course, of that in the United States specifically. So bear that in mind about police brutality and put that alongside the Facebook Live advert campaign, which specifically says, quote, have somebody take out a phone, don't worry about what you're going to do, someone will think of something. That is the quote from the Facebook Live advert. Now, in most places across Western Europe and in the United States as well, you do have a right to film people in a public place for non-commercial purposes, so long as, and let me look down at my notes here, one's depiction of individuals isn't offensive, defamatory, or unreasonably privacy violating. So in practice, that often means that that you can capture people in a public place without actually asking them for their permission specifically, so long as what they're doing is legally okay and it's not harmful. But just because you can, does that mean you should? Because it's really interesting that in some of those cases of, and we'll use the catch-all term of police brutality, obviously there are two sides to every story. We won't specifically talk about individual cases, but don't forget the impact of those kinds of situations on individuals, on the people you are filming, and also on the bystanders as well. Now, this article from qz.com talks about some really interesting a couple of use case studies where it says that very often an individual victim caught on camera in such of a situation which I've mentioned previously risks perhaps retaliation or re-victimization, and those risks can of course trickle down to their families as well. And this article specifically says that sometimes police force or police departments have then gone on to re-victimize somebody shown in the video because they have been shown in the video. So maybe they didn't film it themselves, it's because it is out there and the police have been shown in a certain light. That means that that person or their family have been targeted again by some law enforcement officers. So that's a whole kind of murky grey area, which isn't pleasant to talk about, but it does perhaps make you think twice. Do I want to do this live, or do I actually want to record this and maybe keep it and give it to the authorities, whichever authorities you're talking about, whether it's police, judicial system, maybe it's the media, and maybe I take a back step. Maybe my name, my account isn't actually publicised, isn't actually mentioned along with this. So I wonder if rather than encouraging people to simply whip out a phone and to press that live button, maybe there should be something somewhere in the terms and conditions that maybe suggests to people before they go live, maybe you ask someone's permission, maybe you think twice about what it is that you're going to show. It's worth thinking about, isn't it? Worth thinking about.
That whole issue about permission, again, it's something we've talked about a lot. And I know it's a hot topic for you and for I, Peter. And I'm glad to see that is that topic that actually is being covered. In fact, if you're just joining us live here, we were actually here at the Livestream Insiders, or if you're perhaps watching the replay, what our goal is here is to give you tools, tips, technology, case studies that actually you can put to use in your organization. And we actually just deliver this in around 30 minutes. I say around because sometimes in the last few weeks, there's been so much news, we've gone over a little bit. So we really appreciate you joining us here. And if you find this of assistance, perhaps you actually might share with this with other people in terms of actually who people are kind of looking at using live inside their organization or externally. Now, if you don't know Peter, my co-host, he is the author of a number of books, and he's got a new book coming up, which actually is about live video. It's going to be out later in this year. But one of the audiences that actually is going to be really interested in his book are those who are journalists. And the reason for that is Peter himself is a reporter, journalist, mobile journalist for a large international news organization. And so, Peter, you might be interested in this next piece of news that we've got, in this next story that's coming up. And again, I have to say thank you to the person who actually wrote this. They were actually at a conference, and his name is Martin Bellum, and he's written a really nice, long, in-depth piece about the whole issue, again, staying with that topic of ethics today, in terms of ethics and live video. But this is actually ethics around news organizations. So he talked about the topics that was discussed on a panel. The event was the International Journalism Festival in Perugia. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. And representatives there were from the BBC, from Channel 4, which is a news organization and I guess entertainment organization in terms of in the UK. Storyful, which is an organization who validates, who verifies content through social media, including live video, and also somebody was there from Twitter. Now, I'm going to go through every one of it, but there were certainly a number of points that actually caught my attention. Peter was just talking about before in terms of when you've got difficult environments that you're actually recording in. And journalists have been doing this for many years in terms of live, but sometimes there's been obviously a little bit of delay. We get less of a delay often in terms of with live streaming. So coverage of things like terror attacks, they were saying was very difficult because particularly in terms of the inclusion of comments and emojis. And I've sometimes found that. I know that some organizations have turned their comments off, let's say, for example, over on Periscope, if they're actually reporting something because of that. And it's actually quite difficult to manage that. And he actually goes on, the person from the BBC goes on to talk about it's more challenging than live television with the comments and emojis. It's harder to plan that story arc of what you're going to show and how you're going to show it. The comments can be incredibly destabilizing. Unlike TV, when you can just be staring down a camera, expectations the audience have, for example, on Facebook, is that they'll become part of it and they will direct the camera. And so it goes on and talking about this. And I really like this suggestion he had. And I agree. It'd be good to have some ability to actually moderate comments, particularly if you're a news organization and you're doing something that's very, very sensitive, almost like a green room he was talking about. So that would be really interesting if that was available. I won't go on to the other kind of key parts of it. But one thing I just want to bring up in terms of, at the end here about the summary of it. And this is Joanna Geary, who works with Twitter. And she reminded the audience that in live streaming and social situations, journalists need to be aware of three things in terms of duty of care. Firstly, duty of care to the audience. Do we know who the user is? Do we know where the stream is likely to go, was the comment. The second thing is the duty of care to journalists doing the curating and doing that sharing of that content. They're putting their own teams into situations where you don't know what content's going to be there, what people might see. It could be really disturbing. And we actually talked about that on the live stream panel. at RTE MojoCon last year in terms of some of the situations that journalists find themselves in when they're streaming. And also a duty of care to the person who's filming. You can't underestimate how unprepared people are when they put out their phones to capture something that's going to have a huge audience. By using that footage, we're changing the situation again for them to bring them into a wider attention. So interesting in terms of that article. Thank you very much, Martin, for curating it for some of us who weren't able to be at that conference. And that's what I find is wonderful, isn't it? When people attend events and they actually then can curate some of the top headlines for us. So that's over on his website, martinbellum.com.
Okay, Krishna, thanks for that. We've got another 5 or 6 minutes to go. And you know what? We love user studies. We like to bring you examples of where people are doing something a little bit different, where they're pushing the envelope a little bit more. We've got a few of those coming up right now. First of all, from or in a moment, from a conference that Krishna was at, and also another idea, another live streaming event that is quite literally out of this world, pun intended. First of all, very, very briefly, let me tell you about a beauty augmented live stream. This is a new bit of technology. This is really fun because, of course, as you know, on Snapchat and also on Facebook Live, you can have the masks. Hold on, what if you can adapt that so it's slightly different for a little bit of beauty or makeup? Because there's a company called ModiFace, which is setting up the first beauty augmented live stream technology for Facebook Live and YouTube as well. And what this means is that everyone, like makeup artists and brands and so on, will be able to broadcast live video beauty demonstrations of makeup styles by virtually applying them on their broadcasts using this new ModiFace technology. The application is all done in kind of in real time, so it's applied instantaneously as the video is being recorded. That sounds really, really interesting. And again, it's pushing that technology a little bit further. Krishna has been at a couple of conferences over the last couple of weeks. She's just mentioned one in Ireland. And also before that, she was up at another conference in, I think, the north of England, wasn't it, Krishna?
Oh, I'm actually getting stuck in terms of all the different events that I've been at, to be honest, Peter, in terms of where have I been? Yeah, so I've been at Sage. In fact, the Sage conference was in London. And so that was an event that I was at. And you're right in terms of I shared a few tips. So we won't go into this here just because of the benefit of, or the challenge of time, I should say. But if you're interested in it, I actually wrote a little article about the use of Periscope for events. And I actually cover 3 topics. I could probably talk about that 4th topic now, in terms of if you missed it at the top of the show, we were talking about the fact that Periscope now has the ability for us to have, or for brands to have bespoke hearts for your event. So that's probably, I need to go back and update the article. But anyway, I gave 3 tips in that. And one of the things was about permission, which is something else we've talked about today. But the other thing we're talking about is actually how you could be encouraging people to live stream. And in fact, we talked about this before I went to the Sage event. It was really interesting that they wanted us to live stream, but they were really clear on the events that we actually couldn't live stream. So there was a couple of well-known entrepreneurs there, and part of the agreement would be not to share that content. So we put that article in the curation. We'll put the curation out for you tomorrow in terms of after the holiday weekend. So I hope that's of assistance to you.
Here's another example of how a media organisation has been using live stream. It's CBC Calgary in Canada, of course, and they've kind of done things slightly differently. They've put together a really nice long program of 90 minutes where they had reporters across the city with their microphones, interviewing people at different locations and putting it all together for a live Facebook. And that was done through the broadcasting kind of live stream app called DeGiro, or DeGiro Live. It's what a lot of the pro broadcasters actually use. So that was going out on Facebook Live. And now what they're doing is editing all of that together into a 1-hour program. So they've kind of done things the other way around. So they're not producing a program for TV and then putting it out on social. They're producing a program for social and then putting it out on Facebook, doing a program for social and then putting it out on the broad TV. So that's really interesting. And all of that, of course, was done on Facebook Live. All unscripted. There was an order, obviously, a running order and bullet points, which we always recommend that you do actually have. And they actually had some people who were keeping an eye on moderating the comments and kind of directing it and producing it all. But a really, really good example. So 15,000 views, not a huge number, but it's a little bit groundbreaking, a little bit different. If you want to know more about that article is via journalism.co.uk. And again, all of these articles will be curated by Krishna, and they'll be out in the next 48 hours, courtesy of Livestream Insiders.
And I should say it was really nice to see my friend Erin. We actually met at ModiFace, where you and I are heading off to in a few weeks' time. And I think you had an opportunity to talk to him as well. He's been using mobile journalism a lot for his organisation in Calgary. So it was really nice to have a nice long article about him. And if you're going to be at ModiFace in a couple of weeks' time, make sure you say hello to Peter and I. We're actually off to Galway and we'll be meeting up again there and talk about all things in terms of mobile journalism. Okay, so just a couple of things I want to highlight. Firstly, Tony, thank you so much for your personal message to me. In fact, I say personal, on my Facebook page over on Krishna Day. One of the things, Peter, you know that Tony joins us every time from China. And he actually was just saying that actually, if you want to live stream if you're an individual there in China, he actually made a comment, because I'd shared something in terms of an image from earlier on this year from The Economist, and he said they've completely blocked foreigners from broadcasting here on their live streaming platforms, and they have to apply for a live streaming broadcast license from the government. So we've been watching that develop over time. Thank you, Tony, for keeping us up to date in terms of what's going on there, and particularly as we know that it's actually the very early hours of the morning when actually you're watching and participating here at Livestream Insiders. Okay, so another quick couple of updates for you. This is something that some of you who are intrepid explorers, not of things like Star Wars or Doctor Who, but the real stuff, which is NASA. And I thought this was really interesting in terms of we're actually seeing NASA are going to be doing a 4K live stream later on this month. And again, we'll have the link about how you can actually go ahead and watch it. But who are they partnering with? Not Facebook this time, not Twitter or Periscope. This time, interestingly, that powerhouse of content, and that's Amazon. And so that's who their partner is. And so they're actually going to be in conversation there. So from 250 miles above Earth, NASA astronaut Dr. Perry Whitson will be in conversation with Sam Blackman of Amazon Web Services. And they'll actually be holding a panel at the Las Vegas Convention Center here on Earth. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how that works on the 26th of April. And the other piece of news that we wanted to kind of give you, which is something that we saw on Facebook, and again, some of you who are very active in the community and have been part of, in fact, Peter, you were that part of this in terms of the first time they had, I think it was the Periscope Summit as it was then, and now it's actually called Summit Live. Well done to Brian Bell. Ryan has actually, don't know the reasons for it, but I'm guessing because he's getting so involved in VR, he actually announced that he was actually feeling excited through the emoticons when I saw it there on Facebook. And I think this was yesterday morning, our time in the UK and Ireland. And he said that the Summit Live has actually been purchased, has actually been bought now by a company called LiveLeap. If you don't know LiveLeap, it's actually software that works with Facebook. You can syndicate your content across different Facebook properties, be pages or groups and so on. And so if you're doing Facebook Live, that might be a product you want to look at. However, key thing here is that they have now actually purchased Summit Live. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen in terms of the kind of events that they plan to roll out. And so well done to Ryan, who's obviously built an asset there. I know he wasn't the only one. Sabrina, who's here with us today, she was very active in that, particularly this year. So everybody who's participated and has been part of Summit Live, I'm sure you'll be watching with great interest to see what happens next. and good luck to the team at Lively. And I know we'll be watching carefully to see what happens next, because Peter, you're often in the States, aren't you, in terms of you've been able to attend that Summit Live, I think, originally because of you being traveling in that way.
Absolutely, yeah, the Periscope Community Summit in New York City in September 2015. Not going to the States this year, as far as I know. It's down under this year, so it's going to be really interesting, perhaps, to I've already tucked up a couple of people who hopefully I should be seeing in New Zealand and Australia as well. That's about it. A little bit over the 30 minutes, a lot to put in, even though it's kind of a bit of a downtime for many people around the world because of the Easter holidays, but inevitably we always want to share the very latest information with you, and there it is on episode 79 of Live Stream Insiders. Thank you so much indeed for the loan of your eyes and your ears. Thank you so much for your comments, for your shares, for the emojis which have been floating across the screen as well, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the pre-record. We really, really appreciate it. You know, Krishna, I think we'll just mention one more thing here, and that is we really appreciate everyone that watches from week to week, whether you're a new watcher or whether you're just coming in for the very first time. We really appreciate it. You know what? Hands up, we don't have a huge number of viewers, but we've been going for nearly 100 episodes. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze here just as I'm wrapping up. We've been going for nearly 100 episodes, and I think one of the key things that we learned this week, Krishna, is we love everyone watching, but you never know who is watching, and we are really honoured, we are pleased, we are proud. The word is getting out about Live Stream Insiders, because you know what? There have been quite a few different groups of pairs and individuals and companies who've tried to do a show like ours, but we are the ones who've been going now for 79 weeks, 79 episodes. We've hung on in there. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have huge numbers, but it's the quality of people who watch. We are really proud to say that during the course of the week, you and I got a message to say that none other than Roker Media have been watching our shows and like our shows and took the time and trouble to get in contact with us and to say how much they've enjoyed consuming our content. So, you know, I think that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And we really like that a company like Roker Media is perhaps picking up some of the live stream news from the last 7 days by watching our programme at a weekend in 30 minutes. So to Ron and to John and to Luke and to Mr. Roker himself, thank you so much indeed for the loan of your eyes and your ears as well.
And Ben as well. We forgot Ben. I have to say, everybody, though, gets hearts from us. You know, all people are equal. And just because they're in that organisation doesn't mean, as you said, Peter, that we don't value everybody. And we very deliberately, we'll make no bones about it, we don't advertise this stream in terms of, we don't do lots of promotion beforehand, and we certainly are not putting any advertising behind it. So I know some people are doing streams where they've got 2 people that turn up and actually then get thousands of views because they're putting advertising. We've decided at this point in time that's not the route that we want to take. Who knows what the future will be? There's also some other strategic reasons why we don't do that as well. But, you know, at this point in time, we really value every one of you, and we value every one of you who's here live, who's here on the replay, and also who shares our content afterwards. So, Peter, why don't you if you might want to close out and tell people when we're going to be here again?
Okay, yes, so episode 80 of Live Stream Insiders will be here in 7 days. So in the UK and Ireland, that's 7 o'clock UK and Ireland time. And obviously a different time for where you are on British summer time now. So we'll be back next Sunday at a time zone convenient to you, either live or pre-recorded. It's the only programme on the live streams that talks about live streams and says we'll give you all the news that's appropriate to you to do with live streams from the last 7 days in 30 minutes. We are Live Stream Insiders. Thanks so much indeed for watching. Have a great week.